Well, hello. I'm back again. Good to see that you are too. And if you've not been here before, welcome to the tennis vlog. I'm here to preview and predict the semi-final matchups on the men's and women's side at the 2021 Australian Open. Again, emphasis on the preview. I'm back here once more out of a sense of duty more than desire. With my previews and predictions this year, particularly on the prediction side, I was determined to be more kind of stats based and numbers based with the calls that I make, because in times gone by, I've kind of taken outside factors such as emotions, conditions, etc., and that's had a weighty kind of it's had a significant weight on the outcome I've come out with. So I thought, okay, let's pay more attention to stats this time around. And what happens? Ashley Barty absolutely dumps her match from what looked like the brink of victory, and Rafael Nadal crumbles from the edge as well. So that kind of leaves me floundering when it comes to these semi-finals. Every single one could go any which way. So let's just preview them as best we can. And at the end of the day, the prediction is just an educated guess. So emphasis on the preview. They are four great matchups, though, all in their own way, very intriguing, and looking forward to getting into the meat of all this. We'll be starting with probably the headline matchup of the two on the women's side and the two on the men's side. And just so we know how we're rolling, I'll start with the first two women's matches, and then I'll head on to the men's matches second, because that's the order they'll be played in, even though the Australian Open is still doing their thing of one men's match on one day and the other one the following day. Work that out. But we begin with the popcorn match, the headline draw between the world number 3 and three-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka and number 10 seed Serena Williams, still going for that elusive number 24. How close she has come, but not quite there yet. Both of these two looking in fine form heading into this match, so we have reason to expect a clash that is pretty close and pretty high quality. Before we get going on what to expect, let's just have a quick look at the routes they have come through. I'm going to start with Serena, and I'll rattle through this up until the semi-final because we've already been through it in the quarter-final preview and predictions. So, rattled through her opening matches. 6-1, 6-1 over Lara Siegerman, 6-3, 6-love over Nina Stojanovic. Bit rusty, bit hit and miss in the longer rallies, but at the end of the day, did what she needed to do to come through and edged some tight moments in the first set against Anastasia Potapova to win that one in straights in the third round as well. Then she dropped a set for the first time against Aryna Sabalenka, who obviously came into this tournament in stunning form, having won 3 of her last 4 trophies. Serena dropped the middle set, but had great focus and resolve to come back for the 6-4, 2-6, 6-4 win. Brilliant movement. That's when her defensive play really started to stand out. And yet the Sabalenka game style is one that she likes to play against, as we've seen in her rivalry with Sharapova. Her matchups with Sharapova. Shouldn't have used that word, but came through in the 4th round to set up that quarter-final meeting with Simona Halep. Halep having just taken out Iga Swiatek in 3 sets, so there were high expectations, and Serena was the dictator of that clash. Halep, a counterpuncher at the end of the day, as much as she's given Serena a run for her money in times past, including beating her in the 2019 Wimbledon final. She was always going to be at Serena's mercy if Serena was playing well, and Serena did get the 6-3, 6-3 victory there. What to say of Serena's performance? She looked once again very good on the back foot. She came into that match very focused and knowing the zones that she needed to be present in. The longer rallies were absolutely key, and she dominated the longer exchanges. She was leading in that category of longer rallies, won comfortably by the end of the match. It didn't pass without a few hiccups. Serving, she was generally good, but she actually only managed to save 1 of the 4 break points that she faced against Halep. So there was a little bit of vulnerability in the pressure moments. But all in all, she was going for her shots. 24 winners in total, 33 unforced errors, and really cracking down on some second serve returns as well in kind of 2013 fashion, just to get some cheap points. So All in all, very impressive from Serena, and to be honest, that's the most convincing I've seen her look in a long time, not just at this tournament. She's very focused and set on this event. She looks more at ease than she has been at previous Grand Slams, and with the other side of the draw completely opened up now, I think she'll definitely have high expectations for herself, and the Osaka matchup only becomes bigger with the way the top half has just absolutely gone to pieces, I guess. Not to take anything away from Jennifer Brady and Karolina Muchova, who've played brilliantly, but over to Osaka, who obviously saved the match points against Muguruza in the fourth round, which makes her a very tough customer from now on. She did start off pretty comprehensively ahead of that. Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova 6-1, 6-2 in the first round, then 6-2, 6-3 over Caroline Garcia, who didn't even get a break point. 6-3, 6-2 over Ons Jabeur, the number 27 seed, who had the potential to take some rhythm away from Osaka. She still steered through that one nicely. And then the comeback win over Muguruza, who was the number 14 seed and last year's finalist. So definitely a very impressive win. 4-6, 6-4, 7-5. As well as Serena played against Halep, I think Halep was lacking some depth on her shots, wasn't quite able to go toe-to-toe with Serena, and because of Serena's depth and consistency on the back foot, Halep was actually forced to overhit. So in terms of sustained quality from both sides of the net, I still think that third set of Muguruza versus Osaka is right up there on the leaderboard on the women's side of things. Muguruza driving deep and Osaka forced to pick up balls from the baseline. She really had to use the angles to try and throw Muguruza off her rhythm. Have fired a brilliant ace to save the first match point and outlasted a rally on the second, and then she rolled through to the victory 7-5 in the third, which made her the heavy favourite to come past Shea Su Wei. Now, if Osaka had had that matchup earlier in the tournament, say second or third round, I might have been calling the upset, because Shea was obviously in fantastic form to take out Andreescu. Her game style is the exact kind to trouble a power player like Osaka. The drifting backhand, the way that she takes the ball so early, you're not quite sure which way she's going to hit, the way she can disguise the drop shot, the great touch and feel that she has. But Osaka now completely locked in. She was definitely there for the big moments. She faced 3 break points from Shea and saved all of them. And her conversion rate on breakpoints of her own was pretty similar to Serena. I think Osaka's was 4 converted out of 12 chances. Serena's was 5 out of 16, maybe, or something like that. Let me check. Come on, Abigail. Where is it? Breakpoints. Yeah, 6 out of 13. I was right. Okay. So very similar in that regard. Also very similar between Osaka and Serena is the fact that their first serve percentage hasn't got anywhere near the heights that both of them are capable of. Osaka's best percentage, I think, is 68% landed in her match with Muguruza in the fourth round. Serena's struggling really to get beyond the early 60s. She only got 55% in first serves in against Halep, and Osaka only 48% of first serves in against Shea, but she was winning a whopping 92% of those points. And that just tells you everything about the weapons that the serves are for both these women. They're going for so much on it that they're not minding having to put these second serves in play. However, both of them are capable of capitalizing on the return and really going for that first shot, and consequently, I think both of them will need to up that first serve percentage for their matchup with each other this coming night, within a few hours, actually. So let's take a look at the head-to-head. It's quite the famous little rivalry. Can't even pronounce my R's at the moment. I'm tired. I'm very tired. Miami 2018. They met in the first round. I remember that match so clearly. Osaka, having just won Indian Wells and having a quick turnaround, she came through that match 6-3, 6-2. She's currently up on the head-to-head just fractionally, 2 wins to 1. But her 2 victories have come on the biggest stages. So it was that Miami victory to kick off, and then the infamous US Open final where Osaka did bag her first maiden trophy or major trophy. 6-2, 6-4 for Osaka. Obviously quite a bit of controversy there. Serena significantly struggling to find her first serve, and Osaka at times pretty much blowing her off the court, which doesn't tend to happen against Serena, or didn't tend to happen. So comprehensive for Osaka, but the thing with Serena is she's so competitive. She will not be losing 3 matches in a row against any player, and I think since that match she has paid particular attention to Osaka's game. She said during this tournament that she'd been keeping an eye on Osaka. I'm sure Osaka was keeping an eye on Serena as well. And Serena did win their last meeting, which was in the quarterfinals of the premier event in Toronto. That was 6-3, 6-4. So far in their rivalry, it looks like whoever gets the momentum early goes to the victory. But I'm not sure this match will be quite as quick and succinct, just because of the quality that both players have brought, the focus that Serena has brought, and the quality under pressure that Osaka has brought. So, the keys to this match, I mean, obviously the first serve is going to be significant. Both players will want to get as many cheap and quick points as possible, because to be honest, when the rallies extend, as well as Serena is moving, it's difficult to say who will come out on top most often. Because yes, Serena was able to dominate in that department against Halep, but Osaka's a very different matchup. Serena was drawing a lot of shorter balls from Halep and was able to get her on the run by turning things around. Against Osaka is going to be more difficult because she has more weight of shot, more depth of shot. The way her ball travels, Serena's not going to have as much time either to set up to dictate or to stay in things when she's on the stretch. So that's going to be very difficult. I don't want to spend the entire video just on this one match, so I guess I'll cut to the chase with this one. So Serena really focused and doing so well when she's on the back foot, but Osaka will take the time away. And something that just stands out to me still is, as focused as Serena's looked, she has looked convincing on the way to the back end of majors recently and still lost. And I'm not saying that she's looked as convincing as she does now, because this is definitely the best I've seen her for a while, but she has rolled past opposition, and it's disguised the fact that when things get close at the back end, nerves and the mentality are still a bit of an issue. And I was just looking at those numbers there of Serena, despite playing supremely well against Halep, only saving 1 of the 4 break points she faced. Osaka, meanwhile, able to step up when it really matters, such as that utter quality to stay in the match and in the tournament against Muguruza. So, at the end of the day, I did predict Naomi Osaka to win the whole event at the beginning of it. I did predict her, actually, and was backing her from the beginning of the US Open, and then Azarenka was playing so well that I actually took a chance on Azarenka in the final and was left to regret it. Osaka was shut out early on, but did come storming back. And I don't want to be in that position again. So even though I think the only time I've predicted against Serena on this channel has been when she faced Andreescu in the 2019 US Open final, I think the safer option here is still Osaka, due to her big moment mentality and ability to produce. There's a history of players saving match point here on the women's side and going on to take the title. I think Osaka's looking in good form. She's not likely to be overawed by Serena. And I think I do have to, just for this prediction, take Osaka here. And just because Serena might do what she did against Azarenka in New York and come out roaring from the starting blocks and take the first set, I'm going to say Osaka to win this one in 3 sets. So 1 down, 3 to go. The next one being the second women's semi-final, and I know that whoever comes through the Serena versus Osaka matchup, and it could well be either of them, whoever comes through that is going to be heavy favourite to win the title, but that puts a lot of external pressure on them, and Brady and Muchova are both capable of wins over both those players. So do not write these girls off. Jennifer Brady, the number 22 seed, and the number 25 seed, Karolina Muchova, who just took out Ashley Barty in, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, the most painful match I think I've ever watched from both sides of the net. It was definitely one that was lost as opposed to won, but Muchova had played outstanding tennis to even get to that point. Let's start with her because she is the lower ranked player fractionally. These two barely separated in the rankings. So what's notable about these two players is that as good as Brady's form has been, she made the semis at the US Open. She's now in semis here. Muchova's had the more challenging path to date. So first round over Elena Ostapenko, Grand Slam champion. It was straight sets, 7-5, 6-2. Second round over Mona Barthel, another straight set, 6-4, 6-1. Then it got tighter against Karolina Pliskova. She was actually 5-love down in the second set, but came through 7-5, 7-5. Like I said, was expecting Pliskova to be upended at some point, and Muchova was the perfect player to do it. Countrywoman who knew her game well, and she's got so much versatility, Muchova. Actually, she's very similar to the player she just beat, Ashley Barty, in her confidence moving up the court, her ability to slice consistently and change up the pace of the rally, bring it into her favor. And she was able to do as much effectively against Pliskova and against Elise Mertens, who I think was a dark horse for many, just with the way she was striking the ball and the confidence that she had. Once again, Muchova down early, but came through 7-6, 7-5. And then the match against Barty. It's kind of irrelevant at this point, but I think some people wanted me to address the medical timeout that Muchova took at 2-1 down in the second set, because this match was a tale of two halves, or as I put it, a tale of two nightmares. Muchova came out barely able to put a ball in the court, not able to get any kind of power or rhythm going. She kept kind of clutching at her eyes. It did seem as though she wasn't injured, she was ill or suffering in some kind of way like that. I compared it at the time to as if she was kind of walking through a fog in a daze. She didn't look at all engaged with the match. And 6-1 Barty looks very dominant. But the reality is that Barty didn't have to do much there other than slice balls back into play, punt forehands back into the court, and as long as she was keeping the ball in play, she was generally winning the points. So at 2-1 down, I did not flinch at Muchova leaving the court for a medical timeout because it definitely looked like something was up. In fact, I didn't know if she might come over really dizzy or faint at some point. So people saying she used it tactically, I don't think that tactics were on her mind at that point in time. I think it was a case of making sure that she was actually able to carry on playing. At the end of the day, I'm a massive believer in Barty's game. I think it's an incredible thing for the tour that she's world number one. Just as a person, as a player, she's a great ambassador. And her attitude after this loss as well was exemplary, but she just chucked this match away. She completely let the medical timeout throw her. It was as though the two players traded roles. Barty, just an erratic game to get broken once Muchova came back, and then Muchova did have some momentum actually from there, moving up the court, finding the corners with the flatness of her strokes as she came in and holding Barty back. But that third set was anyone's game, and both players disintegrated at times, but Barty more so. She just could not get any rhythm flowing, couldn't get any power on her shots. Every time she tried to do so, she sprayed the balls wide. Even her backhand slice, which she can hit winners off, which she's so consistent with, wasn't finding the court. And it was just a terrible, terrible day at the office for Barty. I said after the match, I hope that Melbourne doesn't become a mental battle for her the same way it has become for Sam Stosur. That would be really unfortunate, because a similar thing I feel happened against Sofia Kenin for Barty in the semifinals last year. Barty was not thoroughly outplayed there, but in the pressure moments, you could tell that she was a little bit tight under the pressure of being expected to win and wasn't able to get across the line. And I'm sure that there was a huge amount of tightness and pressure for her. Here, even as Muchova in the final game dumped backhands into the net, didn't look like she had it in her to get across the line, but was given a helping hand and finished on an ace. So credit to her for coming through when she really never hit her stride in that match. But now I've talked about how terrible that was, let's have a look at the great run of Jennifer Brady, who has carried on her form, credit to her, despite a loss the week before this event. So it is notable that her draw to date hasn't been as tough, but she has come through convincingly. 6-1, 6-3 over Bolsova Zadoinov, 6-1, 6-2 over Madison Brengel, 6-1, 6-3 over Kaya Juvan, 6-1, 7-5 over Donna Vekic, who did get in her teeth into her game a little bit in that second set, but Brady still just so good on the back foot, and with that margin for error on her topspin forehands to keep in play. And the amount of cheap points that she's been able to get off her serve are key, have been key, and I think will be key in this upcoming clash, not to give Muchova too many openings. Came through her quarter-final after resurrecting from a set down against her good friend Jessica Pegula. I expected this to be close because of Pegula's form, the magnificent timing she has on her ground strokes, particularly on the forehand, her great hands at the net, all things that could challenge Brady and kind of neutralize the breathtaking power play that she's able to produce at the moment. So Pegula did take that first set 6-4, but credit to Brady for bouncing back. I think Pegula got a little bit more erratic from there on. I'm going to be honest with it, I did not manage to watch this whole match, so I only saw bits of this, but very good from Brady after going down a set and being in danger of the upset to win those final 2 sets so convincingly, 4-6, 6-2, 6-1. So she'll probably be backing herself a fair amount coming into this match against Muchova, and I think the issue and the challenge for Brady here is if Muchova does come out with the kind of form that she brought to Barty, it's very difficult for any player to be competing and not quite sure whether your opponent is coming or going, not have any rhythm from their side of the net. And even if she is on song, Muchova is a player that isn't going to give you deep shots at the baseline all day, every day. She will mix it up. She will try and make Brady move. She will try and make her uncomfortable. They have faced off the one time before, and that match went the way of Muchova. That was in the round of 16 in Prague, 2019, so on clay. And it went the distance, 6-4, 3-6, 7-6 to Muchova. I think there were very little openings for both during that, and it just goes to show how stable the two of them are and how comfortable they are within their own service games, which suggests that if both can bring their best level to this match, the openings will be few and far between again. So it's about really, much as the previous match, who's going to have the better head for the big moments. Also with Brady, I have to ask the question, Muchova's going to be moving in a lot. Is she going to be steady enough on the back foot to find the openings to force the errors? If she's come through a match with Pegula, who likes to move up to the net and has great hand skills, I think I have to give her the benefit of the doubt on that one. So then it probably comes down to the pressure moments and who's going to survive them. And Muchova, as much as she was dizzy and not at her best in that last match, there were signs of mental vulnerability against Barty and nerves. And I just wonder how much that will play a part in this match against Brady, who, you know, is expected to win in this clash, but seems pretty confident in herself and her ability. Brady as well has fended off, I think, 16 of the 22. Have I got that stat right? Have I written it down? I'm not sure. But I think she's saved 16 of 22 break points she's faced in the tournament as a whole, which is a very solid number, and that's going to be key. I think that she'll have the head for it. It's just a case of whether she can handle Muchova's changes of rhythm off the ground and whether Muchova's going to be striking into the corners the way she was at times against Barty. So there's another thing as well, in that Muchova's quite a slow starter, or has been in her matches here. Hasn't cost her so far. She was 4-love down in the opening set against Mertens, 5-love down in the second set against Pliskova, and then obviously a set down against Barty, and was still able to come through all those matches in straight sets. But I'm not sure that Brady would be so forgiving of a slow start. And she has, apart from that one set against Pegula, she has surrendered minimal games here, Brady. So I think this one's pretty 50-50, to be honest. And if we're looking at game styles alone, I think that Muchova should have enough to take this. And as much as she's probably an unknown name to many, I've been watching her for a 2 or 3 years and can definitely see her walking into a Grand Slam final. I mentioned ahead of the event about how the eventual champions at these majors are either Grand Slam champions or long shots. And I think that Muchova is more of a long shot than Brady. But at the same time, I think Brady, with the greater margin for error on her shots and her quick movement around the court, she's probably a bit more reliable if this was to get tight. And she did overturn a 1-love head-to-head record in her last match against Pegula. So don't think it's fair of me to write Brady off 2 matches in a row. I'll take the shot on her, and I'll say Brady to win this one in 3 sets. Thanks to everyone watching live and posting in the chat. Whether you're watching this live or whether you're coming at a later date, leave a comment. Let me know what your predictions are and who you see coming through, because some of these are pretty much toss-ups, I have to say. Who have we got next? It's the men's semi-finals now, and wow, if you called this semi-final before the tournament began, then full credit to you, because I sure as heck didn't. Novak Djokovic, the top seed, my pick to win before the event, up against the qualifier, Aslan Karatsev, whose tournament began outside of Australia, but now he's into the semis and looking in fire form. So there's no pressure on his shoulders, really, apart from anything that's self-inflicted, based on stats, based on numbers, based on status. Djokovic is fully expected to come through this, and the way Karatsev has been responding to his match situations with such calm, such cool, almost so casual, I do not expect him, and I don't think anyone should expect him to be a deer in the headlights in this situation. He's in a Grand Slam semi against Novak Djokovic. He has everything to gain here, and Novak Djokovic is the man with everything to lose. He's also the man that's dropped more sets of the two players on the way to this round, so it's interesting to take a look at. Let's start with Karatsev then. He of the monster serve and the big 1-2. Straight sets in both his opening rounds, and then his first big upset over Diego Schwartzman, the number 8 seed. I've said it before, Schwartzman, better built for a slower surface, but Karatsev taking it to him, 6-3, 6-3, 6-3. Then it was the fourth round, and if I'm honest, I thought it might end for him here. Auger-Aliassime had looked so good against Denis Shapovalov. He's a young upcoming player with so much versatility in his game. Looks like a dream draw for him, but in a way, not so dream a draw when you consider that he was the heavy favourite and he was going for a first major quarter-final. That might have got down on him a bit, but eventually Karatsev did overpower him for the 3-6, 1-6, 6-3, 6-3, 6-4 win. And then we got to the quarterfinal, and once again, injury, strike, illness played a part, and therefore I'm really not sure how much I can take from this quarterfinal win, which Karatsev fully earned in the end, but Grigor Dimitrov clearly hampered for the last couple of sets, and I think you've got to give him a round of applause and say well done for staying out on that court, because it was just rubbing salt into the wounds. He'd been in great form this tournament, hadn't dropped a set. He was injured before the match. He had back spasms, lower back spasms, or something along those lines, and he said the reason that he even went out on court for this match was the fact that he'd been playing so well in the lead-up, that it was, obviously it's a qualifier that he's up against, so he has to back himself, and he just had to give himself the chance, and it now explains why he was covering so much ground and getting so many balls back in the early stages, but it did catch up to him. When I tuned into this match, I think it was back end of the first set, I compared Dimitrov to being in kind of Wii tennis mode, because Karatsev was dragging him from side to side on the court, and Dimitrov was just getting to everything and returning it with interest, and with the depth of shot that he has and the flatness of it, it was proving very lethal to Karatsev. Excuse me a moment. So really, beginning of the second set, when Dimitrov had umpteen chances to break in his first and second return games, the first of which lasted over 12 minutes, you've got to think that if Dimitrov had taken one of those games, he would have been halfway, 3/4 of a way to the match. But credit to Karatsev for stepping it up and finding his marks to come through. Early stages of the match, but I think that ultimately won him it, because at the end of the second set, Dimitrov threw in a poor service game to get broken. Karatsev served it out, and from then on, Dimitrov was just a presence on the court, really. He was arming those first serves into the box, letting Karatsev hit winners, and you have to say credit to the qualifier for his focus within this situation, because we saw Barty go to pieces against Muchova. It is not easy to keep your focus and keep going for your shots when your opponent is so obviously hampered, but he managed to do that. Credit to him. A bit of a walkover in those last two sets, but he did come through in 4, and he just has so much to gain against Djokovic, and apart from a major title, very little to lose. Djokovic, meanwhile, heck of a lot to lose, but he's coming through pressure moments pretty well. So it was his best performance in terms of his own stats and his own level, I think, in his first round against Jeremy Chardy. 6-3, 6-1, 6-2, pretty clinical. Then it started to get close in the second round against Francis Tiafoe, 6-3, 6-7, 7-6, 6-3. He did very well to keep his head and keep his cool, though, after dropping that second set. Djokovic, usually such a king of the tight moments, the big moments, and obviously dropped that tiebreak, but was able to reset, keep sending the big serves in and get to the third set tiebreak win. And that serve at the moment is just the cornerstone of Djokovic's game. You don't tend to think big serve and Novak Djokovic is the first player that comes to mind. Oh man, voice is going. But it's definitely been seeing him through some potentially very tricky moments here. So moved on to face Taylor Fritz, and that's when the whole injury kind of controversy started for Djokovic. 7-6, 6-4, 3-6, 4-6, 6-2 he came through after going down in the third set and seemingly pulling something. A lot of armed ground strokes into play, but he found his best level on serve for the final set to come through. Against Milos Raonic, he was always going to go out and play that match with the head-to-head record he had against Raonic. Djokovic does not mind a target at the net, and he does not mind a matchup with the Canadian. 7-6, 4-6, 6-1, 6-4 he came through. And then the quarter-final match with Zverev. And in my tiredness of mind, I'm struggling to remember specifics of this clash. What I do remember is that Zverev should have had at least one of those final two sets. I think he was up 4-1 or 3-1 in both of them. He had the lead. I think he went out to 2-love at the beginning of each. And that will give Karatsev a confidence boost, because the way that Zverev was getting into Djokovic was approaching the net behind his serve, moving into the court, keeping his positioning more aggressive and more offensive, because for Zverev, he can fall into the temptation of sitting back, but he knew the exact moments to go toe-to-toe with Djokovic in the longer rallies, and he knew when it was necessary to step into the baseline, finish with a 1-2 punch, that kind of thing. So for Zverev, I think he had pretty much the right tactics throughout that, but there were just some moments where he had the wrong execution. There was a moment in the, I think, third or fourth, where Djokovic completely lost it, shattered his racket to the point where someone had to come up and sweep up the splinters, I kid you not. And Zverev just didn't take advantage of Djokovic's frame of mind at that point, I don't think. It was clear that the top seed wasn't where he wanted to be, sat down at the back of the court, took a bit of a breather between games, and I feel that this was an issue for Fritz as well at the back end of his match with Djokovic, where he kind of had him on a string and didn't know what to do with him. And if you're going to put Djokovic away, you kind of have to do it the first time around, because even when he's not physically at his best, you then have to beat him mentally. And at a place where he's won 8 previous titles, that is tough. As Zverev found out, it was 6-7, 6-2, 6-4, 7-6 for Djokovic. So staring through, avoiding a final set, thanks to his serve. He did face set points with Zverev returning prior to the tiebreak and was able to save them. So he comes through, but the way that Zverev was able to play that match against Djokovic will probably give Karatsev a confidence boost. And 2-3 years ago, Djokovic against a qualifier in a Grand Slam semi-final, I'd have taken Djokovic in a moment. But with Djokovic's form moving into this, and Karatsev's mentality and the way that he's utilizing the conditions here and winning so many cheap points, it's actually not straightforward, this one. It is their first meeting. Djokovic said he had never even seen Karatsev play prior to this tournament, so Karatsev probably has a better knowledge of Djokovic's game than Djokovic has of Karatsev's, but it is going to be about how they handle the big moment. And at the end of the day, is Djokovic really going to let a qualifier knock him out of a tournament where by name and ranking, he's now the heavy favourite to win with Nadal's departure? Big thing I have to remember here as I make this call is how Dimitrov was bullying Karatsev in the early stages of their match. Yeah, eventually he overpowered, but when Dimitrov was just all in those long rallies, the depth and the defense was driving Karatsev crazy at one point, and he did very well to hold his own and come through some big games, but if Dimitrov had maintained that level throughout the clash, it's very difficult to say whether Karatsev would have come through or not. Another thing for him is he's been serving incredibly well, getting a lot of cheap points off the 1-2. We know what a great returner Djokovic is. We know how great he is on the defense and how great he is on the stretch. Even if he's not getting to every single ball, Karatsev will know that, and that might cause him to overthink. Djokovic is going to take some of those cheap points away from him, and you have to wonder how much that might affect him in the pressure moments. It's going to be interesting because fans are back for this day of action, and I'm sure that there will be an atmosphere and a lot of people getting behind the underdog. And it's difficult to say with Djokovic's form whether that will fire him up or whether that will get on top of him. Karatsev, I think, will love it. He had a good atmosphere for his match against Schwartzman. He's played much of his career on the ITF and Futures circuit. These are the opportunities that he's worked for and is living for. So I think that he is going to bring it to the semi-final. But at the end of the day, I picked Djokovic to win before the event. Didn't even know where Karatsev was in the draw. And as tempted as I am, I'm not going to predict a qualifier over Novak Djokovic at this stage. To make it very clear, if this upset were to happen, it would be incredible and shocking to many. But seeing the level that Karatsev has brought, I wouldn't be overly surprised. He's shown that he can go toe-to-toe with the best players in the world. And Djokovic hasn't hit his top form. But Djokovic is the however many time major winner. I even forget where they're at this point. 17, I think. I'll check that after, but someone tell me, everyone knows this. But, you know, eight-time major winner here at the Australian Open specifically, and I'm not predicting against him in this match. So I'll say Djokovic to win. If he takes the first 2 sets, it could be as good as over, really. But I think Karatsev's brought such a good level, and Djokovic has faltered in some tight moments, that I'm going to give him a set. So I'll say Djokovic to win this match in 4 sets, and someone confirms 17 slams for Djokovic. Thank you. It seems a minute ago that Federer was on 17, so they're all moving still, the big 3, and I would not be writing them off yet. So that's that, and we move on to the final match, which didn't look like it was going to be the final match for a while during the night session of the most recent day of action, but it will be Daniel Medvedev against Stefanos Tsitsipas, who came from 2 sets to love down to beat Rafael Nadal and avenge his crushing semi-final defeat to Nadal in 2019, a result that, if you watch the last video, you'll know I thought that might fire him up, but he didn't look fired up until the 3rd set when it was almost done and dusted. So very interesting that Tsitsipas was able to come through against Nadal, who is usually such a mental giant, but really had the match on his racket and let it go. Who do we start with then? Better start with Tsitsipas. He's the number 5 seed and Medvedev the number 4 seed. So Tsitsipas was actually pushed to 5 sets in his 2nd round by Thanasi Kokkinakis. He'd come through comprehensively in round 1, which really made me sit up and take notice, because Simon is one of those players that can make you rally for days, unsettle you, and Tsitsipas was able to close that one out comprehensively, 6-1, 6-2, 6-1. So I thought, okay, time to keep an eye on Tsitsipas. He then did lose the tight moments in that match with Kokkinakis to be taking the distance, but credit to him for maintaining concentration. That was against a home player, great atmosphere, and Tsitsipas able to come through 6-7, 6-4, 6-1, 6-7, 6-4. Crucial there, his commitment to continuing to go for it behind the serve, move into the court in that final set to shut Kokkinakis out as much as possible, not give him rhythm. 3rd round was over Mikael Ymer. It was 6-4, 6-1, 6-1, so normal service resumed, but then a disruption in the 4th round. Matteo Berrettini withdrew, and I did think that would be beneficial against Nadal, because he'd already had a 5-setter, wasn't short on match practice, and Nadal, as we know, likes to make things physical, and you want as much energy as possible, mentally and physically, going in to face him. And given that that went the distance, I think that Tsitsipas will be grateful for that rest. So it was 3-6, 2-6, 7-6, 6-4, 7-5. From my perspective, Yeah, brilliant comeback from Tsitsipas. Mentally was so sound to be able to capitalize and come through, but it was a case of capitalizing. No question in my mind that Nadal should have won that match in straight sets. He was on the front foot throughout the first two sets, from midway through the first set at least. And in the third set, even in the third set, he dropped all of 1 point on serve on the way to the tiebreak. And that point that he dropped was in the very last game prior to the tiebreak. So the way that Tsitsipas kept himself in that set and in the match as a whole was he finally found his range on serve. Big serves, moving up behind, stretching Nadal out across the baseline. But Nadal didn't look ready to give way because twice he had to serve to stay in the set, and he did so comprehensively. So definitely the tiebreak was on his racket. First point of the tiebreak, Tsitsipas sprayed a backhand 1-2, I think it was, wide of the court. And it was all Nadal's. And what did he do? Move into the court and I think missed his first smash of the match. There was another missed smash in that tiebreak. There was a cross-court forehand into the net that he would never have missed if it was another point of the match. And Tsitsipas edged the tiebreak. And for me personally, when Nadal lost that tiebreak, it felt like he'd lost the match, because it's incredible for someone who's such a mental giant as Nadal that he's losing so many of these tiebreaks recently. ATP finals, it was his downfall against Dominic Thiem in the group stage, lost 7-6, 7-6. And then he had the chance to serve for the win over Daniel Medvedev, eventual champion, in the semis, and was taken the distance and lost. So from there, it was an uphill climb for Nadal. And Tsitsipas had been fully let back in. He was making more of an impact on the return. He was sustaining that brilliant level on the serve. He didn't have a break point until the back end of the fourth set, but it is all about peaking in those big moments. And it was Tsitsipas with the big moment brilliance. He said after the match that he didn't allow himself to think too much. That was essential. So many of these players overthink in a match against the likes of Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, and it is their downfall, but not for Tsitsipas. He played instinctively, and very key was his resilience as the match wore on in the longer rallies. I think early in the match he was rushing, he was trying to get on top of Nadal early, and he didn't have the timing or consistency for that. So he was sending a lot of unforced errors into the net. He just chilled out a bit at the back end of the match, was quick on his feet, so consistent off the forehand and backhand side, really, but the forehand particularly flattens it out, makes it lethal, and that was putting Nadal under a lot of pressure. Nadal wasn't getting as much depth of shot, and the conditions, and this might be key in the match against Medvedev, the conditions did change in Tsitsipas' favour. At the beginning of the match, it was earlier in the day, the ball was higher bouncing. As it moved into the cooler part of the evening, the ball was bouncing lower, and Nadal had less time on the defence, and Tsitsipas was putting him on the defense a lot. It was very difficult for him to get under those flat forehands. And those were all keys to Tsitsipas ultimately coming through. I think poor from Nadal by his standards. I've no doubt he will be back, but that was a poor loss for him by his standards from the position he was in. But a brilliant comeback win for Tsitsipas that will give him a lot of confidence heading into a match against Medvedev where he's firmly down on the head-to-head. So here's Medvedev. I expected to see him here with his pre-tournament form and with his form at the beginning of the tournament. There's only been one little blip, really, but it did come on Rod Laver Arena in the third round. So he had a very convincing start against Vasek Pospisil, 6-2, 6-2, 6-4, and then followed it up with 6-2, 7-5, 6-1 win over Roberto Coballes Baena in round 2, and then was the third round against Filip Krajinovic, where he was in some trouble. Anyone who's watched these videos on like a step record, at the moment, you don't beat Medvedev, you make him beat himself, you frustrate him, you get in his head. Krajinovic managed it when Medvedev was on the brink of a straight sets win. I guess almost Tsitsipas v Nadal kind of outcome to the match there, because Krajinovic edged the third set, and from there Medvedev was annoyed, frustrated, didn't have the same timing, didn't have the clean, kind of loose strike on his shots that he needed for them to really be effective. But he did what Nadal didn't and regrouped for the fifth set to eventually come through 6-3, 6-3, 4-6, 3-6, 6-love. Hasn't been pushed since then, but hasn't had as challenging opposition as Tsitsipas, purely just because Tsitsipas just faced Nadal. But over Mackenzie McDonald, it was 6-4, 6-2, 6-3. And then over Andrei Rublev, the number 7 seed, great aggressive tennis, but Medvedev has his number. 7-5, 6-3, 6-2 for the higher ranked player. And what's interesting for me is that Medvedev has never lost to Rublev. I think it's now 4-love, 5-love in his favor if you count their lower tier matchups. He is 5-1 up in his head-to-head with Tsitsipas. And these are two higher ranked players who have clean serves and love coming into the net. That's their best offensive play, coming into the net right behind the serve. And Medvedev is dominating both of them in the head-to-head, which says something about how he's able to get inroads into their strengths. And I think a lot of that has to do with how good Medvedev is on the return. His reach is so great and his control is so good, even when he's pulled out wide. And if the likes of Rublev or Tsitsipas are rushing up the court, his angle on the return and his placement on the return is able to turn that against them and make it backfire. And that's something that he could use very well against Tsitsipas in this upcoming match. But to be honest with you, the head-to-head is a little bit of a cause for concern with me, because those that follow my work will have heard me say before that when two players are this highly ranked and have had so many close contests, it's not necessarily a good thing for the player who's dominating their head-to-head, because for two players that are so good, that gulf cannot be there forever. At some point, Tsitsipas has to close the gap. And he started to close the gap in their most recent meeting. So the head-to-head stands 5-1 Medvedev, but Tsitsipas won their latest meeting, which was at the 2019 ATP Finals, a tournament that Tsitsipas went on to win. 7-6, 6-4 for Tsitsipas. Now, their previous 5 meetings, only one of them was over in straight sets, which was the semi-final in Shanghai, also 2019 for Medvedev, 7-6, 7-5. So even that was super close. These two, both of their strengths kind of balance each other out, and it really is a case of who can produce when it matters. Medvedev, prior to that, had won in 2018 in Miami, 2-6, 6-4, 6-2. At their only previous Grand Slam meeting, he won at the 2018 US Open in the second round, 6-4, 6-3, 4-6, 6-3. It's funny because I actually remember watching their first ever meeting, that one in Miami. I just recalled it now. Quarterfinals in Basel, 6-4, 3-6, 6-3, and then their only meeting on clay in Monaco, 6-2, 1-6, 6-4. Both of these two pretty good and able on clay as well, but Medvedev's still looking for that French Open breakthrough. So this head-to-head throws caution to me, because Tsitsipas does have to keep closing that gap at some point. Is 6-1 too big of a gap? In my head, it kind of is. And these are the factors that have me leaning towards Tsitsipas a little bit. Because prior to the event, I thought I'm not predicting anyone over Medvedev prior to the final except Nadal. And actually, when Nadal lost that third set, I thought, okay, even if he comes through, Medvedev's favorite to make the final, just because of the way Nadal faltered under pressure. But where do I go from here? I think that strengths for Tsitsipas are the way he can utilize the conditions. You know, it's a night match, it will get cooler, the ball will travel flatter, and he can move up the court and he can get a lot of cheap points in his pocket. But like I say, Medvedev's return might be able to balance that out. I think that Medvedev's been done a little bit dirty by the scheduling this tournament, because Tsitsipas has had a lot of outings on Rod Laver Arena, at least 2 or 3 more than Medvedev, and he's also played 2 night matches on Rod Laver Arena. Now, Medvedev has played 1 night match full stop, and that wasn't even on RLA. And conditions do make a difference. If Medvedev has to take a bit of time to kind of adjust to the conditions while Tsitsipas is all good, ready to go, that could potentially cost him. So that does throw a little bit of caution that the stats aren't going to show you. And I think that that is an outside factor that's worth taking into consideration and could favour Tsitsipas. And then obviously that head-to-head throws caution, but what throws it back again and makes you consider Medvedev more is the fact that Tsitsipas is not going to play the whole match at the level that he played the last 2 sets against Nadal. Nadal was not able to penetrate the court so much when the conditions got cooler, and he was at Tsitsipas mercy in a lot more of the longer rallies than he would usually be, and he was giving Tsitsipas a lot of cheap points on serve that I don't think Medvedev will be as keen to give and hand over. I also think that Medvedev will make life tougher in the longer rallies because of his ability on the stretch and his unpredictability and the way he takes the ball early. Tsitsipas isn't going to have as much time to get across the baseline and recover. With Nadal, yeah, it's difficult with his high topspin, but with the way his ball travels, you do have that little bit more time to adjust and get ready for the next shot. I don't think that Tsitsipas is going to have that so much with Medvedev. And like I say, no coincidence that Medvedev has these great records against players whose biggest strength is to move up the court and try and finish things more quickly. Medvedev's defense will need to penetrate the court. There is no question about that. I think that he was playing with, from what I saw, quite a lot of margin for error against Rublev, which might just have been a strategy against that opponent. But for a match with Tsitsipas, I think he needs to take it to him more. I think he needs to target those outside edges more. He needs to stretch him more, go back behind, get him off balance, change it up into the forecourt. All things that Medvedev can do. It's just a question of how quick will Tsitsipas be playing and how much pressure will he put on Medvedev. So as much as Medvedev was my favourite of these two coming in, and I saw him making a Grand Slam breakthrough first in terms of making a final or winning a title, there's a lot here that's actually in Tsitsipas' favour, but how well is he going to sustain his level? How's he going to respond physically and mentally after that battle against Nadal? Because it was after his very close win over Federer, shortly after that he fell against Nadal in the 2019 edition of this tournament. Medvedev, I think, is still fractionally safer, so while it could go either way, I think I've got to stick to my initial thoughts and go with Medvedev. And the way he has as well been able to rise up when he's under pressure on serve, saving a lot of break points. He'll also have more trouble, I think, on the return. Tsitsipas, he was able to get more in play against Nadal, and it's worth remembering that in those early stages against Nadal, 13 return games for him passed by without a single breakpoint opportunity, and that shows some vulnerabilities for him. So let's cut it short. Medvedev for me here, and I think I'll say Medvedev in 4 sets. It's very tough, really, because Medvedev is the kind of player where you don't even scratch him or you take a bite out of him. There's no kind of nibbling at Medvedev, because if you get into his head a little bit, the likelihood is that he goes to pieces for a while and you're going the distance. So it's more likely to be Medvedev in straights or someone in 5, but I just wonder if Tsitsipas might bring his better level at the beginning and take the first set and Medvedev take the next 3 or something like that. I just have to give it a bit of leeway, I think, because it's such a tough one to call. But I will take Medvedev for this win, and I'll say Medvedev in 4 sets. So hopefully that preview was satisfactory. I'm making it my mission to watch every single match to completion in the semi-finals so that I'm more sure of myself going into each final. Not that I'm ever sure of myself ahead of the finals, but it's definitely been an intriguing tournament. I think as far as quality goes, there have been dips and rises, a few painful dips in that last round, I have to say. But there have been some great contests, and I think that we'll be seeing at least 2 or 3 more before the tournament is out. So thank you very much for watching. Like I say, leave your comments, let me know your predictions, make sure we've got it all covered so at least someone's right. And come back for the finals, the men's and women's. I'll be doing separate videos to preview those, one for the women's final, one for the men's final on different days. Looking forward to seeing what the matchups are, because yeah, I have genuine curiosity. So wrap up there for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you for the finals.